Sendai. This, the office of the local government in the same city. There were several powerful aftershocks within the hour. In a country all too used to earthquakes, the shock at the magnitude of this one all too obvious as people spilt out onto the streets of Japan's cities and tried to comfort one another. The earthquake was off the northeastern coast and the tsunami unleashed by it swept inland. In its path, cars, boats, even buildings, debris of all kinds. The earthquake triggered fires. Here an oil refinery burns out of control.
I offer my deepest sympathy to the people who have suffered the disaster. Regarding our nuclear power facilities, some of the nuclear power plants have stopped automatically, but so far, no radioactive material or radiation has been confirmed to have been leaked to the outside. There has been no information of those lines so far. And given this situation, an emergency disaster response headquarters has been set up with myself as the head.
This was the scene in Parliament when the earthquake struck. Reports say power was disrupted to more than 4 million buildings in Tokyo and its suburbs. Transport has been severely disrupted too. This is the airport in Sendai underwater. Flights have been halted elsewhere, trains too. Military planes were scrambled to help in assessing the damage. For now, Japan is still trying to take in the scale of this disaster, with many of the countries in the entire Pacific region on alert for its potential impact on them too. Mike Wooldridge, BBC News.
Well, you see on the screen there, we were running that 5 people are known to have lost their lives in the course of this earthquake. We have just had an update from agencies suggesting 19 people have been killed in the course of the earthquake and indeed the tsunami. I suspect that figure will continue to rise.
Well, while we stay with these pictures which give you an idea of the incredible force of this tsunami and indeed the height of that wave, let's bring in on the phone Laura Hughes, who is Britain in Yamagata, I think that's right, is it, Laura? Tell us where exactly that is and what you've been experiencing.
Yeah, Yamagata is about 100 kilometers from Sendai. So the damage was a lot less here, but it was quite a big earthquake and it lasted for about a minute. Yeah, and everyone's a bit shaken up, a bit scary, but so far there's no serious damage here. But it was probably the biggest so far that people experienced.
Tell us a little bit about where you were. Are you I mean, at the moment it struck. I mean, were you at work? Are you based in Yamagata for work, or are you on holiday?
No, I live here. I'm working. I'm a teacher, and I was working at the time, just in the office, and we're on the 3rd floor, so we felt quite a big shake, and then everybody was evacuated. And I work in the downtown area of the city, so most people were evacuated and just on the streets, and all the electricity and gas and water have been turned off, so we're still waiting for it to be turned back on now.
And what is the advice to you in the meantime?
So far everyone has just to go home really, because we're feeling some aftershocks but nothing too big now. But yeah, so far it's just to go home because everything's closed and there's no electricity, so that's, yeah, so far we've heard.
Okay, well we wish you well and thank you very much for speaking to us here at the BBC. Laura Hughes there in Yamagata.
Well, the pictures tell very much their own story, don't they? But Humphrey Hawksley's with us now. Just give us a sense as to the scale of what we're seeing, Humphrey.
Well, you can see those huge wafts of water and the fires, the force of nature, awesome force of nature, as it were. So far, 19 dead. This is media reports. People buried in landslides. The warning of the tsunami, which has gone right across the Pacific now. Many countries there not as well equipped as Japan to deal with it. Just to give you an idea of what actually happened, 15 miles beneath the surface of the sea, 80 miles off the eastern coast of Japan, the earthquake struck at 8.9 magnitude. Now, there's only about one a year in the world that goes above 8, so it's one of the biggest to hit Japan in many years. The tsunami in 2004-2005, which killed about 200,000, 250,000 people, was 9.1, so very close in that, and this is a big test for the tsunami warnings in this area. The tsunami is due to hit Taiwan in about half an hour or so. People are being evacuated and there are warnings being given there. In about 4 hours' time it's due to hit Hawaii. People are being warned from Mexico to Alaska to clear out of coastal areas. In Japan itself, this is a very earthquake-aware country. Everybody is trained from school as to how to deal with earthquakes. The military has been scrambled. They're assessing the damage. The nuclear power plants, there are 5 nuclear power plants. These are built to close down as soon as there's a tremor or anything that is likely to be a major earthquake. They've closed down, and the Prime Minister has reassured the public that there's been no radiation leak.
And that's of course a great concern, isn't it? There's so much dependence on nuclear in Japan.
Well, that's right, and there's been 4 million homes at least that have been shut off without electricity in the country. So so Tokyo itself sort of had undergone a blackout. The bullet train is still apparently working, but major expressways have been damaged and have been shut down.
Yeah, I think we've heard also that in some areas now even the bullet train has been brought to a standstill, yes. But perhaps no great surprise there. Yeah. Humphrey, thanks very much indeed. I mean, we're just looking interestingly. These are the pictures from Tokyo, of course. This is almost the other end of the country, isn't it? And the shocks there have been extraordinary. We've understood that there are millions of buildings and premises there which lost power, at least for a short period of time, and buildings swaying. I mean, it gives you some sense as to the scale of this.
Well, that's right, because that's 240 miles away from where the quake happened, and the quake happened 80 miles out to sea. Now, what it was doing there was it was pushing the Pacific Ocean. The seabed of the Pacific Ocean was being pushed underneath Japan, as it were, a huge moving of tectonic plates, which is creating these awesome walls of water that are travelling thousands of miles across the Pacific at huge speeds, and is going to hit, as we know, it's going to hit the whole of this Pacific basin. Yeah.
Okay, Humphrey, thank you very much indeed for that.
Well, we're getting a lot of comments in from you via electronic means, email and text message and so on, just to give you a sense of some of the experiences of people around Japan. We've heard from Anna van Lemoen in Tokyo, who says, I was commuting from work when the first quake struck, and it immediately induced a suspension of the metro system. Many people, including the Japanese themselves, didn't seem concerned, but once the train rocked violently on its springs, panicked voices and desperate looks betrayed the magnitude of this earthquake. Tremors are continuing even now, almost 3 hours after the original earthquake, punctuated by violent aftershocks. Many people were evacuated from office buildings and apartment complexes and took refuge in the open streets. And there's talking about as well the emergency services racing to prevent the spread of fires that have sprung up around the city. Property damage, the estimate is, may be extensive. My own apartment, says Anna van Lemoen, was in disarray, and many buildings along my walk home had been damaged and cracked. One office tower lost part of its facade. No one was injured.
Well, some extraordinary accounts coming into us here. Let's speak now to Jeffrey Balanag, who joins us on the line from Higashi Shimbashi in Tokyo. Jeffrey, just tell us what your situation is.
Well, it is just another normal day. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, then we felt a slight shaking in the building. The building we're in is designed to shake, as are most buildings here in Tokyo. And it seemed like it was a repeat of the earthquake last Thursday, but this one was really, really long. And unlike the previous earthquake, the ground was rolling. It's like, you know, when you're on a boat and you start getting seasick, that's the kind of motion that the building had. It wasn't shaking from side to side. So it was really creepy. I'm from the Philippines, and we had a very big earthquake like this before, and it was really, really bad. The ground is rolling and shaking, and this earthquake reminded me of that and made me very scared.
Right. Obviously, you've got dual concerns here for yourself, and of course, possibly for people back home, because the Philippines is within the orbit of the tsunami warning as well. But what did you do at the point at which you realised that this was not just another quake?
Well, after doing the usual emergency drills, putting on our helmets, opening the doors, making sure people had their equipment on, I started hitting the email. I knew that the government would restrict the use of cell phones for use by emergency services, so I started sending email and calling landlines and finding my sister and my niece, who are hopefully on their way home through the gridlock of the city. Trains have stopped, traffic is all gridlock. And hey, Facebook saves the world. I'm in touch with my friends back home in Facebook, and we're exchanging messages on how things are going on.
Yeah, well, it's good to know that you can do that so promptly, isn't it? And you are where now? You're hunkered down somewhere, are you?
Yeah, I'm in the office. Need to stay here, monitor. I work in IT, monitor the systems, and keep in touch. Here there's electricity, we have water, communications. A lot of the homes here don't have electricity and water, so staying put is, I think, the better thing to do.
Okay, Jeffrey Bunanad, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
Well, let's return now to Japan and specifically to Tokyo. Our correspondent Roland Burke, who's been speaking to us throughout the morning. And Roland, perhaps we can start with these revised figures that we seem to be getting, suggesting that the death toll has now reached 19. Is that what you're hearing? Okay, apologies, obviously some sound problems there trying to connect with Roland in Tokyo. Let's just bring in these latest pictures for you that just give you a sense of this whirlpool that's been created there. I don't know if we can bring in Humphrey on this one. Is that usual? That because we've seen a wave moving forward essentially, but that very much a spinning whirlpool-like motion.
Yes, I mean, without knowing the details of that, it's obviously hit something or some other force of current that has created it. And again, what we're seeing time and again with these pictures is the sheer force of how what looks like a placid Pacific Ocean, almost out of a tourist brochure, going along, and it is incredible force. Then it hits the land and it goes from seawater to sludge, and we saw it in the earlier pictures there, picking up houses, picking up trucks, picking up ships, and simply flinging them around as if they were toys. And here I think what you've got is some dreadful whirlpool that is a vortex that's sucking everything that it meets into itself. I'm not sure what that is there, if that is a building or something, or a ship or something on the edge of that. But what we're seeing here, these are the pictures that we didn't see in 2004, 2005. These are the pictures that in Indonesia, the Philippines, the tiny island of Tuvalu in the middle of the Pacific that is threatened anyway through global warming, and now the Red Cross is warning that the waves of this tsunami, as it goes over that island, could be higher than the island itself. So you've got lots of people in these the Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, Vanuatu, these places that we hardly hear about or know about. Only a few 100,000 people, a few million in them, but the Red Cross is now warning that these waves could gather to such a height that they could literally sweep over those islands.
Okay, Humphrey, thank you very much for shedding some light on that. That whirlpool, actually, we were hearing was indeed off the eastern coast, as you'd expect, probably in the line exactly from where the epicenter was. Let's return to Roland Burke, who we were speaking to a short while ago. He's in Tokyo for us. And Roland, I was just asking you about the latest casualty figures as you were hearing them.
We're hearing 6 confirmed dead at the moment, but it is very early stages. I can tell you that whirlpool was off the coast of Ibaraki, which is on Japan's Pacific coast to the north of Tokyo, so something that was caused by the tsunami. Here in Tokyo, we're seeing lots of people trying to walk home. Public transport has been suspended. It is now dark here. It's early evening. So people, many of whom have spent much of the afternoon down in the streets, in the city squares, outside their offices, feeling a whole series of aftershocks that we felt too. They are now trying to think about how to get home. And the Prime Minister of Japan has said that he's set up an emergency response team within the government that he's leading, and he's asked the people of Japan to remain cautious and vigilant and calm.
And just in terms of that suspension of public transport, is that a power issue or is that just a precautionary issue because of aftershocks and so on?
It's a precautionary issue. Some of the mobile phone networks are down, but the power is still on in Tokyo. It didn't seem to go out here in the city. the expressways. Tokyo is crisscrossed by expressways that are up pretty high. They're up on flyovers, about sort of 5 or 6 stories high. Those have been closed as well, so there's pretty much gridlock in terms of the traffic. And inside office buildings, many of which are dozens and dozens of stories high. There are lots of skyscrapers in this city. All the elevators, the lifts have been shut off as well. So people have had to walk down from their offices.
And Roland, a lot of people we've been speaking to giving their sensation essentially of an earthquake and describing it really like the motion of a ship, a roller